Welcome to Renegade Thinkers Unite, a show that will help you transform your marketing from mere messaging to programs that break the rules and make a difference. Join the movement today and learn non-traditional techniques that give you an edge. Now, here's your Chief Marketing Renegade, Drew Nizer.
Today, we're coming to you from the world headquarters of Mercer. Is it the world headquarters?
These are the world headquarters.
Okay, excellent.
Yes.
The world's largest HR consulting firm, and we're right here in New York City. My guest is Jeanniey Mullen, who ranks among the most ebullient CMOs, or is it ebullient? I don't know. He says neither. And the most ebullient CMOs that I have met. And actually, that's saying a lot because you folks that know, I've interviewed a lot of CMOs. But before we introduce Jeanniey officially, I want you to know that Mercer is big. There are 21,000 employees.
Oh, there's more than that.
Okay,
there's
more than that.
Over 21,000 employees.
You're in 40 plus countries?
We have offices in over 40 plus countries.
Okay, so if the larger the company, the bigger the challenge is, we have some big challenges to discuss.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the bigger the challenge, the greter the opportunity. So I'm thrilled to have this conversation today.
That's awesome. So welcome, Jeanniey, to the show.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
So let's start with Renegade Rapid Fire.
Oh, okay. Hold on. Let me take a deep breath.
Yes, okay. So what's your definition of marketing?
Marketing is the ability to influence and inspire people.
Influence and inspire. Is either of those more important than the other?
I prefer inspiring people to improve their way of living.
Inspiring. All right. So the role of marketing is to inspire people. Mm-hmm. Okay. I love it. That's really short and pithy. Are you listening to that, Brent Adamson? All right. What's the primary role of the CMO?
The primary role of the CMO is to be the obstacle remover and the politician to enable that the tie between the business and the marketing team is as strong as possible with a high level of respect.
Oh, that's interesting. So it's really, the CMO is really about sort of greasing the way, if you will, removing the friction that allows great marketing to sort of inspire the organization.
It's interesting because as marketers, a lot of times we're technicians and experts in the area of marketing and don't appreciate how much opportunity for education with our business partners there actually is.
So in my sort of magic four of what it takes to be a successful CMO, number two after courage is artfulness, and that's exactly what we're talking about. It's not enough for CMO just to have the idea, and you have to sort of massage it through the organization.
Absolutely.
Okay. So what's your favorite part of the job?
Oh, gosh. My favorite part of the job is, I'm thinking because I love it all. It's actually getting my marketing team so inspired and thinking out of the box that they learn more than they ever thought possible.
Wow. Okay. So there was a lot in that that we could, as they say, unpack. You're inspiring your team, which is you can't do it alone, but also you're inspiring them to sort of do amazing. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah. So my background's in teaching. I have my master's degree in teaching, and I wanted to teach younger children how to do math. And you have to be super creative to do that. And I couldn't get a full-time teaching job. I ended up at JCPenney running customer service and collections departments where I'm training people to do customer service and collections. And I realized that people of all ages want to learn and they don't know how capable they are. And when you can do something that flips that switch, you set them off on an amazing journey. And so that's what I believe that every CMO should bring to their team is inspiration.
I love it. And being a teacher, it's funny, I obviously assume that role a little bit with this show. And one that I feel it's good. My oldest brother, like you, got a master's in education, didn't end up teaching. My middle brother, after a career as an agent, ended up being a high school teacher for 10 years. So there's a lot of teacher in the Nizer boys, but so respect that background. Okay, least favorite part of the job?
Having to say no.
Interesting. But isn't that inspiring too?
No. If you ask any boss that I've ever had, including my current one, I am what's called the people pleaser that will try and accomplish everything instead of being the formidable person who can cut the lines and say no. I think when people have a passionate idea that we should be allowed to explore it. So.
Interesting, yeah. But at some point, I have been having worked in the creative field. I'm not a fan of the expression "there's no such thing as a bad idea." There are really bad ideas out there.
There are really bad
There
ideas.
are. My most recent one that I saw that I loved was from the gold rush, where some folks had the idea they were going to bring some camels to Canada because they thought they could be helpful in the environment.
Wow.
And it turned out that these camels were so nasty and pissed off at being in this frozen environment that they bit other horses, mules, people, and quickly lost their
Wow.
way. So
Okay.
that was a
All
bad
right.
idea.
Yeah, a bad idea.
That was just a bad idea. So there are such
I'd probably say no to that
things. No
one.
to that.
That one I could probably
All right, you
do.
could. All right, fine. Talk to me about the best advice that you were ever given.
The best advice I was ever given was to listen.
It's, I love that. Of course, as you're saying that, I'm cutting you off. But seriously, it's a lot harder if you're a smart, intelligent person and you've thought things through. Listening is hard though sometimes, isn't it?
It's very hard. It is a skill that you must practice.
Yes, and it's funny. Even great storytellers are great listeners. That was one of Lincoln's characteristics. Both a great listener and a great storyteller. Okay, fine. So, what is your proudest moment as a marketer?
The proudest moment as a marketer is when my team won an award for the best social campaign at Davos this year. Because when I tell you about what the campaign was and we talk about my favorite part of my job here at Mercer and people marketing, you'll understand why.
Excellent. All right. Well, we've introduced the term people in marketing. Inquiring minds are going to want to know what that is, but you're going to have to wait till the next segment to get there.
I love how you keep them hanging on the line.
I know.
It's
Well,
great.
that's
It's
important.
great.
You you can't just give it all out in the first.
It's marketing.
segment. It is. It's storytelling. So, what's besides this social camp? What's the most renegade thing you've done in your career?
God, I've done so many.
Yeah.
Started a wearable IoT company, a line of jewelry that notified people when an important person was getting in touch. They didn't need to have their phone out from scratch, and built the business in 90 days. Let's see, that's one renegade thing.
Wow.
Another renegade thing, I've done so many. I started the Email Experience Council back in the day before people knew how to do email marketing, and sold it to the Direct Marketing Association because I felt traditional marketing needed a boost. I don't know. There's been a lot.
Wow. Oh, that is a lot. Okay. This is starting to get to be a cliche question on this show. But is there a brand that you admire most that we haven't talked about at length on this show? And since you haven't heard all 92 episodes, I recognize that's a hard question, but you can't say Apple.
No, I wouldn't say Apple, and I'm not going to say Nike. I'm going to stay away from, all of the traditional brands, and I'm going to go with Avis.
Oh, very cool. Why?
They try harder.
And so when that campaign was launched, I know the case fairly well. What was famous about that case was they were a distant number two.
Absolutely.
And what it simply got them to do was say, hey, we're number two, but they ended up becoming a much stronger number two as a result of that campaign. They left it and they've sort of come back to it. Do you think they live by it?
Absolutely. I love challenger brands. The freedom that a challenger brand has to be creative and experiential and innovative is amazing. Oftentimes when you are number one, you have to follow a set of rules. People have expectations about you, and you can't be as crazy. But when you have a company like Avis that comes out with We Tried Harder, so I'm dating myself because it's so old, then you just set the bar for any challenger brand to figure out what can you do and how do you do it next.
And what's great about that case is that for a moment they did try harder. It became a philosophical thing. They lost their way at some point. And now if you think about what Hertz says they keep changing campaigns too, but when they say not exactly, because their technology is so good and their notification and their, that experience is hard to replicate.
Yep.
So anyway, when you are a challenger brand, the bar is high to stay there. Mm-hmm. So anyway, that's interesting. Is there a recent book that you've read that made you rethink your drink?
Well, I read books all the time, and you can see them back here. But I would say, hold on one second, because I'm going to get the book so I don't say the name. Okay. The most recent book that I've read that really blew me away was Storynomics.
I've heard of it.
I don't know if you've read it.
I haven't
read
read it.
But it's by Robert McKee and Tom Gerace. Tom Gerace is actually a friend of mine from high school.
Wow.
So he's the CEO of a company called Skyward, and I have many blackmail stories about him. But what he and Robert McKee have done, taking content and storytelling to a new level for businesses, gets you, when you read this book, you actually think differently about every piece of content you create.
There you go. All right. Well, I've written and sort of semi-review. I've read 3 or 4 books on storytelling, and I haven't read this one yet. And it'll be interesting to compare, because what I found lacking in that they all make a good case for why stories are important.
Yep.
But what is lacking, except for one of the 3 that I've read, is a really how-to guide for marketers.
Yes.
And this has that?
It somewhat has it.
Okay.
If you want the how-to guide for marketers, and the next person you should interview is Paul Beck. He's the CMO of a company called Storybooth. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with Storybooth, but it's the most phenomenal content story you'll ever hear. And his presentation about how to actually create compelling content and storytelling will blow you away.
That's awesome. All right. Well, I think we have done a good job with Renegade Rapid Fire. I certainly learned a lot. Last question I have to ask you is, will machines ever be able to do your job?
According to the research that we have read and research we pulled together, if you can describe your job, it will be taken over by a machine.
Oh, well, so can you describe your job?
My job is, if you can easily describe your job, would be a better way. If you can easily describe your job, so I optimize SEO. Goodbye. I manage the portfolio for the business while inspiring my teams and aligning the digital strategy. That's a little too much. I think I'm safe for a while.
All right. Okay, so what we got is that machines will not be replacing you anytime soon.
As far as we know.
As far as we know. Okay,
Can you describe your job?
I can't now.
No. Now you're being safe.
Yeah,
now you just don't want the machine to take the job.
I'm so certain about that, and I'm not sure a machine would want my job. So, which is a whole different story. So, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about people marketing.
You've been listening to another great interview on Renegade Thinkers Unite with Drew Neiser. But the value doesn't end there. As a listener, you can download a free ebook from Drew, Renegade Thinkers, interviews with 11 trailblazing CMOs any business can learn from. Top marketing thought leaders and proven executives from Time Warner, American Express, and Chico's, and others. Get your free copy at renegadethinkersunite.com/ebook. For listeners only at renegadethinkersunite.com/ebook.
Okay, we're back, and my guest is Jeanniey Mullen, and we are at the world headquarters of Mercer, and we're going to talk about people marketing. What the heck is people marketing?
Well, do you want the long version or the short version?
Let's go with the let's go with the medium version.
Okay, medium version. So I get this job as the global CMO of Mercer, and I have incredible responsibility to take the brand to new heights and to ensure that Mercer's brand is as impactful as possible. I have experience at ad agencies. I've had 5 of my own companies. I've been at startups. I've been on the B2C side. And I'm thinking, what's my hook? And I look and I see that Mercer has tens of thousands of clients. But quite frankly, that's not that many to go leverage your clients to be brand ambassadors. Then I look at the budgets. And you never have enough budget to do the brands the right way that you want to do it, no matter what company you're in. So I'm thinking, how do I take Mercer's brand and make it explosive and impactful? And then I get this idea called adhere. And it's all relating to content strategy, where your content is like creating adhere, something that's authentic, inspirational, and relatable. How do you make content that fits into authentic, inspirational, and relatable forms to support the brand? You go to your over 21,000 employees, of course, and you turn every single one of them into brand ambassadors. That is called people marketing. And so the strategy that we employed was, for any initiative that we were going to launch, we would first launch it internally. So rather than doing a media buy and then telling the company, hey, go to the site and look at what we just launched, we decided to launch it to all of our employees in a way that they could personalize it, that they could put their voice around it, and that they could share it with their networks. The average person reaches about 50,000 people on social media a year. So take 21,000 to use just a basic number times 50,000. And what does my brand impression look like there? It looks amazing. So people marketing is the process of leveraging your company's people to create air in a way that is so powerful it takes a brand to new heights.
First of all, that was amazing. I'm all set to break this down. So, first of all, what also makes sense to me is as a company, you're kind of HR as people too. So there's something sort of interesting to me about this business. Secondly, as a consulting firm, it also makes sense to sort of distribute the employees are the brand and the brand is the employees as a consultant,
yes.
right?
Yes.
So it makes sense in a sense to create 21,000 thought leaders because that's what's out there in the marketplace anyway. That is sort of in some ways it reminds me of what IBM tried to do with their IBMers campaign. That I don't know whether that worked or not, although they do have a very powerful, what you would call people marketing program. So let's talk about the first part of this which was AIR and authentic, inspirational, and relatable. That's a good acronym. And that's helpful. Sort of marketing needs to be marketed. So having an acronym is a good thing. I love that. But I think I understand. What's funny is when you provide content to an employee that comes from corporate, it automatically sort of, how does it become authentic when it's not from them? So help us over just that first hurdle of how do you distribute content that can then be authentic?
Yeah, so it's a great question, and I'll use the example I mentioned where we won the award for people marketing for our efforts at the World Economic Forum in Davos. And what we did, I'm going to answer a bunch of questions you probably didn't ask me yet through this example, and then you can ask me more.
We'll probably be done. It'll be a quick.
There you go. So to prove out this theory that people marketing could actually work, we were getting ready for the World Economic Forum. And at the World Economic Forum, as you may know, it's the world's top leaders having incredible world-changing conversations on every topic. But sadly, if you're not there, you can read about what's happening there, but it doesn't necessarily personally mean something to you in your role in companies. So with Davos, we wanted to take the content and conversation being shared at Davos, especially around Mercer and other MMC platforms, and we wanted to make it relatable to our clients and our buyers. In order to do that, we, marketing, did not want to try and put spin or come up with catchphrases. We wanted to engage our people. So we went out to all of our people and asked for a list of volunteers on who wanted to be part of Davos Squad. So the Davos Squad, you see, you got this hat that I'm pointing to right now, and gloves and a scarf, and over 800 people, some from marketing, many not from marketing, raised their hand and said, I want to be part of the Davos Squad. They got the hat, the gloves, the scarf, even if they lived in Mexico, and we just allowed them right then and there to take photos to put on our Instagram channel, which is our internal employee channel, and just share their excitement about being asked to be part of this global initiative and taking part in what Davos is. Then we created content pieces as we were at the World Economic Forum, and we sent them out to the Davos Squad. And the Davos Squad team could choose what they wanted to share. The only requirement was they had to put their perspective on the piece of content. So if we were doing a panel about financial security for life with our Healthy, Wealthy, and Workwise initiative, we shared some of the content pieces, but the Davos Squad then had to say why this was important to them, that they were sharing it, not just retweet it or send it out. And we started to see people's personalities come out. The most amazing opportunity to show how powerful this was to me came from a woman who's not in marketing that works in the UK, who has a little bit of a funny personality over social media, was giving her perspective on this content. And one of our clients from South Africa reached out to our president of our growth markets region with this woman's content and said, I follow Tess almost exclusively now. And so you had content coming from Davos being picked up by somebody in New York, redirected to somebody in the UK who put perspective on it, put it on social media, and it was being read by someone in South Africa and sent back to New York. It was amazing to see that it wasn't the content that we were sharing, it was the fact that she trusted Mercer more because these people were putting their authentic ideas around it. And that also covers the I because it was also inspirational. And super relatable. So, I mean, it covers all three letters. So through this methodology, we were able to gain the fourth highest share of voice around the WEF18 tag. We didn't spend any money, no paid media at all. Other companies were paying to try and catch up to what we were doing and get the followers that were talking with us to follow them. We just had this groundswell of conversation, and it did turn into social conversation at that point in time, which turned into offline conversation, which turned into client engagements, which turned into us building better relationships with our clients and our prospects simply because we were being authentic. We were inspiring them, and it was in a very relatable way.
So it's several thoughts, and you offered so much to think about there. What's interesting to me is when employee engagement programs first started, the idea was like use a voice storm, create the content, put it in a thing, and then everybody would retweet the same thing. Well, what's interesting now is both Facebook and Twitter have made that impossible.
Yes.
So people have to be authentic, so you can't even try, which makes it challenging to scale. It also makes it challenging to sort of quote, stay on voice.
Yes.
Right? So how did you what parameters or guidelines did you provide for your people?
It's a great question, and we tried to provide as little as possible. So there were certain rules and regulations more around social media than anything else. We didn't want any personal commentary about their personal lives, being mixed in with a company post. So that was one. We wanted to make sure that, the posts were focused on the services that Mercer provides or the way that we believe in working with our clients. And outside of that, we just let it go.
That's great. Yeah. I think that's key is that you have to if you want authentic, you have to let people speak in their own voice, and the less prescriptive and more general, obviously you don't want them to be offensive. Yeah. Obviously you don't want them to share baby pictures unless there's a context.
Exactly. And these were hand raisers within the company who knew what the Davos squad was going to be doing. So we felt pretty good, crossing our fingers. You asked me, what's the biggest renegade thing that I've ever done? This could have, potentially applied because we're like, okay, well, they say they know what they're doing. Let's let them on board. But, you had 800 and more than 800 hand raisers who got involved with social. They were passionate about it. They're also passionate about the content and the topics.
So you provided a lot of, this is really interesting in terms of getting employees involved and engaged and why that's so important. How do you build on a program like this? Now you have these 800 hand raisers.
Yes. So a couple ways. But one of the biggest benefits that came out of this, because I'm kind of sneaky that way, was this initiative helped educate the people on the business side of how fun and powerful marketing is when it's collaborative. So what it actually did as a secondary, kind of success out of this is it got our business partners to feel really positive about working with marketing. So the relationships for the future are much tighter. There's a higher level of respect and trust. And from here, we can all be more collaborative and create stronger programs. It also exposed the company to the types of things that marketing does, because in many cases, in large companies, people don't necessarily understand what marketing does. You have an idea of what the marketing team does, and it might be right and it might not. It might be what happened at your last company, but this really kind of demonstrated it. So what happened with these people?
Wait.
Okay.
You gotta pause for a second. We have to take a quick break.
Oh.
Yep. But when we come back, we will we'll talk about your sneakiness, which again, I think is artful. Coming back to this, that it's not the bull in the china shop CMO who is directive may not be as successful, particularly when you're trying things that involve employees, as one who takes a more artful approach. And with that little bit of advice, we're going to take a break and stay with us, because we're really going to dig into how you measure a program like this, and then how do you build upon it.
Hey, it's Drew. I have a question for you, the audience.
How good is your content? We all believe in content marketing, but is your content good enough for you to share it with the CEO and want him to share it with his peers? Is it good enough for your salespeople to share with their prospects? Heck, is it good enough for you to share it with your mom? If the answer to all of those questions was no, well, it's not that good, and you're also celebrating things like National Donut Day, it's probably a good idea to do a content audit. And I know just the person to help you out with that. Text content audit to 917-679-8852. That's actually my cell phone. And we can talk about how to get your content to be world class and do all the things that you know it should be able to do. So you can text content audit to 917-679-8852. And let's figure out together how to get your content to cut through.
Okay, we're back and we're wrapping up what I think is a really interesting conversation about people marketing. So if I were to summarize to this point, the emphasis of this program was to unleash an employee, the energy that they have, let them sort of understand and let the others see the power of marketing. So, okay. You've got this success, this 800 people. Mm-hmm. First of all, getting 800 people to do anything is amazing.
Amazing.
Right?
Yes.
Because they weren't all marketers.
Yeah.
So you got 800 people, they shared their content, it circulated the world, you have lots of data, but it's a moment in time. Right?
No, it's
Okay.
not a moment in
All
time.
right. See?
Because the other goal, the third goal with Davos is the World Economic Forum is a moment in time. It comes and it dies, and we didn't want that to happen. We intentionally created content that we could use throughout the year, and the Davos squad morphed into squads for other programs. Programs about supporting different internal initiatives and different external initiatives. Turned into task forces. It turned into ideation sessions. It continues. And most importantly, it continues to get ready for the next World Economic Forum, which we're already preparing for, even though it's months away, because now that people have seen how much fun it was being on the Davos squad, there are, I would say, almost 3 to 4 times the number of people who are already signed up for next year.
Wow.
So if you can engage that many people,
Right.
that starts your people marketing strategy. If every one of those people does nothing but go home and go to, a picnic or a cocktail party or an evening out with friends and talks about, I got this crazy hat and scarf from Mercer because I was tweeting, there's your brand. Mm-hmm. Like, there's the brand mention, there's the brand strategy, and the brand is coming through more authentically than I could ever pay for it.
So, do you use a platform for this?
We do use VoiceStorm, actually.
Oh, there you go. Which is, it is. I'm quite familiar with it. And funny enough, I mentioned IBM, and this isn't talking out of turn. They use for employee sharing as well, mm-hmm. and it's just very powerful and easy to use and so forth. Okay, so you have a platform which does facilitate it. And by the way, the other reason to think about it is that part of having a platform enables you to measure it quickly and get some analytics
Absolutely.
back. And that is important in this thing. One could argue the business value is there just on the employee engagement side alone,
Yep.
particularly for a brand like yours
Mm-hmm.
where, as we said earlier, consulting businesses are the consultants.
Yes, exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
And so now I would imagine that the less senior people participated.
Not necessarily.
Okay,
We had
so-
people from all levels,
All
all
right.
levels of participation, from my level at the executive leadership.
Mm-hmm.
Our CEO, Julio Portalatin, was the first one to put out a video. He was the first one to put out a photo. And as you can imagine, being the CEO of Mercer, the audience went crazy. Right. Internally, employees loved it. They loved his spirit. And externally, the clients and prospects and just the industry felt there was something so fresh about this. It wasn't the very polished video from the executive that's sitting very still. It was actually him walking down the streets at Davos and, oh my God, there goes so-and-so. We're talking about these topics, and it just brings so much passion to the conversation that you can't help but then be glued to see what's going to come next.
I think I saw an interview of you doing of your CEO live from Davos.
Yes, live from Davos.
Maybe wearing the hat and snow in the background.
Oh, no, that was
a year
Peter
ago?
Bashar.
Okay.
That was our compliance
Okay.
and privacy
All right.
officer for the company.
Okay.
And he's great. And
Right.
and it was his idea to go out in the snow
Right.
because he's like, why would you shoot me inside a random room, which could be anywhere?
Right.
Let's go show people what it's doing.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay. So, very nice that the CEO got involved.
Very nice
That
to have
really
everyone
helps.
involved.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But it says a lot.
This company, I've never been at a company where the support for creating authentic marketing was so strong at every single level. You have new young kids from Gen Z and millennials coming in that want to do these crazy things. And you've got, your traditional people who have been in the business here for 29 and 30 years who are in support of taking the brand to market in new and innovative ways, and everybody in between. And it's been a very interesting journey because, as I mentioned early on, the most important thing I can do is be an advocate for marketing with the businesses so they understand what potential we have and that we can unlock that together and through a true partnership. And for smaller companies, those partnerships come a little easier. There's less people. But for large companies, that takes a lot of time, and you have to build a lot of trust. And once you have that trust, the world is yours from a marketing perspective to explore new ideas that you never thought were possible.
It's interesting. Again, you said so many things that I want to explore, and we don't have time to go through all of them. What I'm thinking about in a program like this, because success has many fathers
Yes.
or mothers, and failure none. And I can't imagine there must have been some naysayers. There must have been some perceived risk in this. Was there a hurdle or two that you had that you that you needed to overcome to get a program like this going?
There were some people who were concerned about giving the voice of the company over to the employees. Mm-hmm. And, we really had to just cross our fingers and beg them to trust us and keep our fingers crossed while the first things went out and make sure that nobody did, things they weren't supposed to do and really just demonstrate it.
Right.
I don't know.
But
there was no budget. I mean, there was no budget.
Right.
We didn't spend any media dollars, so there was no risk or naysaying there.
Right.
It was on social media, so it was already channels that we were using, so there was nothing to be opposed to there. It created incredible content for our businesses to use and our sales teams and client managers to use with prospects and clients, so there was no pushback there. I mean, there really wasn't much opportunity for pushback other than, are you sure they're not going to say something horrible? And we said, absolutely, we're sure, and we crossed our fingers while we said it, so.
There you go. And so you rolled the dice.
Rolled the dice.
Well, and really what you were doing is you were trusting your 800.
Yeah.
Right.
We're trusting our people.
And, there's something to be said, if you can't trust your employees, you probably have a bigger problem.
That is true. That is true.
Right.
That's a
but
great
I
point.
think as you were doing it, because so much of being a CMO is creating an opportunity to a win, a
Yes.
quick success, something that is outside of the box to set up the next one. Right. And it's very hard to walk in and say, we're going to change everything. We're going to, brand new brand and brand new everything. And sometimes when you do something like this that is smaller in scale, at least in terms of out of pocket, but big in terms of reach and impact, that sets you up for the next big thing.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So as we wrap up this episode, and you had again, we've got a group of CMOs in front of us. We'll probably have a group of CMOs in front of us soon at some CMO Club event. You're a member of the club.
I'm headed to the club. Pete and I talked this morning.
Oh, well, there you go. So, yes, we'll be together in Nashville.
Yes, in Nashville.
All right, Pete, you get a shout out in this episode. So, Pete's been a guest on the show.
Of course he has.
Yeah.
How could he not?
Yes, exactly. So anyway, so we're imagining that we're at the CMO Club Summit, and we've only got a minute to sort of give them 3 things to think about when developing a people marketing program. What would you, sort of the key lessons learned in this thing for you?
Break the rules. Don't default to email. And nobody pays attention to what you're saying unless it's very cool.
I love it. Okay. break the rules. I talk about this all the time. One of the reasons that it's interesting, I was at a conference recently, and they were asked these influencers what were the key trends, and I wrote all the key trends. And then what I did is drew a line and said, all right, my recommendations are going to be to our clients going to be the opposite.
Yes.
Right? Because if everybody is leaning in here and they see it, and if I see it that obviously, then we got to move on.
Yeah.
And I use an example this that I think is so amazing. In the mail last week, I got from Airbnb a beautiful travel magazine. Airbnb, the online brand where you book stuff, sent me a mailed magazine.
Breaking through the clutter.
I went, there it is. Wait, isn't print dead?
No way.
So I thought that's a great example of breaking the rules and doing it. And they did it in a really exceptional way. Okay, that was one. Email is gosh, not enough. Can we just emphasize?
No, everybody just defaults to email.
Yeah.
Now, if you're doing a direct marketing campaign, email your heart out. You should absolutely do that. If you're trying to do something with people marketing, think of how many emails you get in one day. That's not the way to reach your people. There's so many other ingenious ways.
Okay. Well, I think we have covered people marketing, and I just like the happiness of that idea.
Yeah, it's cool.
Right?
It's cool.
It sort of elevates marketing into this, it's about people?
Shocker.
Wait, no, that's amazing. All right, well, Jeannie, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you for inviting me. It's an honor. I'm very excited.
This is truly renegade thinking, and I love that. Okay, for the listeners, as always, we thank you for listening to the show. We also encourage you, as always, to share the show. I've been getting a lot of LinkedIn requests lately with hints on other people they'd like me to interview or suggestions for topics.
Yes.
I love that. Keep them coming. And then until next week, keep those renegade thinking caps on and strong.
This has been Renegade Thinkers Unite, but it doesn't end there. Just go to renegadethinkersunite.com for more and subscribe to the show. That way, you'll never miss an episode. We'll talk with you next time on Renegade Thinkers Unite.